Yeah.
Geshe's been teaching the foundation of all good qualities, the text we were just reciting, yeah? You just recited it, haven't you?
Yes, please. Yeah. Shitanman chi said, you the Shujuman Yabanashi. Anichi, Chiman, Geshe Jayat, Nojim Nazoke Karsha, Chiman, Geshe Jayat, Marusum Semalia, Chi, Nunuchi Lagua, or Tuntain you put it, Anipati, Rachen, Ani Pa Togoyada, and Tilangoya, Sunutaya.
Generally, with the Dharma, I mean, this is, after all, what the text foundation of all good qualities is talking about, right? The Dharma. Generally, with the Dharma, what we need to do is take the explanations of Dharma that we'll get in a text like this and reflect on it in light of our own experience. So that by comparing and contrasting our experience with the explanation of the teachings that we get, and we look at what type of things we need to encourage and adopt, and what kind of things we need to discourage and give up, right?
Okay. She said, Dhamma said. Dhamma said, Sanskrit kere.
Sanskrit kere.
Ani, inchi ke kala.
Well, paru teachings.
She said, sure, more zimba. Rangi, Chitan, Kanga Chile, Bena, Rangi more zimba, and chief 10 years, more zimba chief 10 years.
The word in Tibetan chi is translated into English with the Sanskrit term dharma, which Geshe says that's a Sanskrit term, right? I say, yeah. He says, okay. Well, so how do we translate it into English? I offer, sometimes we say teachings, but actually the word is much broader than just simple teachings, because the word means to protect. It means to retain one's own entity. In fact, generally you say that anything that exists is a chi, is a dharma, as in the sense of phenomena.
Understand?
So the definition of this word is actually that which retains its own entity, its own nature. So this, you take something like that mug on Geshe's desk. It's has the entity or nature of mugness. So this thing retains the quality of mugness, so that whenever anyone looks at it, they see a mug, right? So I mean, this is the kind of idea that holding or retaining, one's essence or the qualities, of a thing.
Okay.
So here, simply mug.
Okay. That is recognition. Jitevichida. Ani 가서 진난다. 너와. 원아. 치던 지대니세. 어때? 치 지대 지비야치 대야. 수단 뭔지 맞지 말아야 되나요? 됐어. 고지카가요.
The word chi or dharma, though, has other connotations, like in this dichotomy between the dharma and the mundane.
Oh.
Now, generally speaking, the things we're talking about in either of these categories, whether it be dharma or mundane, still going to be phenomena in the sense of being something that retains its own essence or nature. But, here we're looking at a different sense of the word. This distinction between being, the dharma or being mundane, worldly.
dharma that also current zamba run shop zamba or like a potato.
Here, what is the word dharma, holding or retaining one's own mind. So, dharma here in the sense of holding or protecting one's own mind. Protecting, not potato, yeah? Protecting one's own mind.
Okay, I understand. This is a religious dharma that. Chiru, and chi that, sensual shop.
So dharma, in the sense of religion, you talk about dharma traditions or religious traditions.
Oh.
Here, the word dharma, or religion if you like, means protecting one's own mind.
Understand? Oh. Countries, in shop words, and say, negative show, matamache. Positive say you show, and bad, don't you?
How is it that we protect our mind in this way? Well, by protecting the mind from moving in a negative direction, getting it to move in a positive direction instead. So this is how you protect the mind.
Understand? Negative
Here, when we talk about the negative, we're talking about things like desirous attachment, anger, pride, envy, right? Negative states of mind. These are states of mind, aren't they? Not minds themselves. And on the positive side, you have things like loving kindness, compassion, generosity, ethics. Positive states of mind.
Understand?
We must then try to stop negative states of mind and to develop positive states of mind. The thought, I'm going to kill, is a negative state of mind, isn't it? Whereas the thought, I'm going to give up killing, is a positive state of mind. Take this evening with the vow ceremony, for instance. The thought that from now until I die, I am not going to kill, I'm going to give that up. It's a positive state of mind, isn't it?
Understand? Or that Dhamma dig. Then say you dig. Me time is swatching me, say you dig.
That's the Dharma. This very thought that from now on I'm not going to kill protects the mind.
Understand? So do you understand?
Do you understand that the thought that I am going to give up killing from now on is a state of mind? It accompanies the mind so that the mind begins to resemble it. But it's not a mind, it's a state of mind.
Understand? Etc. Anger and jealousy. Love of raw. What that does not negative say you tie. Then there is the time until one Maruso send it 가 투투 포지티브 적으로야 다 된다.
어디?
싸만 적으로야. 포지티브 적으로야. 그래와 네거티브 쇼 너야만 좋아지. 어떤 무슨
There are limitless examples of negative states of mind, like those Geshe already mentioned: desires, attachment, anger, pride, envy, etc. When it comes down to it, basically what we need to do is to make the mind positive, to cleanse the mind through developing entirely positive states of mind. Yeah, basically.
Okay. What do say? 대야 말로 당당한 제거. 다 들리지 갈래 제기 이다 손에 야는 지금 말해. 맞도 다른 뒤에 시지마 코로나로 여봐 돼.
네.
신내냐 그 대시 시즌에 이제 근데 가서 말해. 가서 이제 좀 내가 돈 나가서 그거치면 내 진입이 대유도 신내냐 그 시즌에 이제 근데 니 몰래 밀로.
네.
이제 매바샤와 신지로 왔네. 너는 먼저 못한데 대동 된 거지. 니 뭐지 나 거지. 니는 라와 어때 포지티브 뭔가.
And this is something that we need to do right now. You can't just think, oh yeah, I'll get to that eventually. Because, as it says in the foundation of all good qualities itself, the second verse reads, understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again. Bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. Geshe has already explained this. There's tapes available for those of you who weren't there. This is just saying, you're underlining the importance of developing the attitude that is intent on making this life meaningful, to really take the essence from this great opportunity that we have.
단단한 말이나 리수요 치 쳐버셔. 니들 집이 쳐왔잖아. 치유지들도 니들 집이 쳐왔잖아. 디티니 띵땡이야. 너는 말로서 너 지금 받는 누가? 말로서 나오면 누가? 저를 같이 쉬려잖아. 오늘 만도 내가 보면 누가?
민도.
아제 두면 나오면 내가 쳐도 누가? 이제 단단한 이뭘 내 거야.
And if you don't take the steps to do that right now, well, this life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow, etc. The point is that there's no certainty to our lives in when we will die, is there? You don't control it. If someone were to ask you, oh, when are you going to die? It would be difficult to say with any certainty, because we don't have control over that. In fact, the time of our death is beyond our control. It is uncertain, right? So we must take advantage, or try to take advantage, and make this life meaningful right now, because you never know when you're going to pass away.
Okay? Well, the religion, I'm not going to send it to do positive to you. The religion is standing on the chi, Shamba gone, Nije gone, Anichi, when you just say gum sad, the kind of positive to you to. The judging. And it can't to do. Sambo Asheta. The Shetana Asheta study chata. Sambo Tipachen. Tipachen. On it, Sombachen. Ashimashita. Gee, Shesuna. That's it. Gums and it. They condition it. Never to Taya. Doduna. Shewa. Never. Combat.
We talk about meditating on loving kindness and compassion, the mind of enlightenment, these types of things. But what does it mean to meditate on these? It means to cultivate these states of mind, to try and get them to arise and remain so that you can become familiar with it. Before you do this, of course, you must understand what it is you're going to be meditating on. Trying to gain that knowledge of the topic of meditation is study. So you begin with study, trying to get your head around what it is you're talking about and what it is you're going to eventually try to develop. Having studied and gained that knowledge, then you try to develop that state of mind within yourself. Try and get that to remain for as long as possible, so that you get used to it. In fact, the word meditation could also be translated as cultivation, and it's related to this to the word of getting used to or accustomed to a state of mind.
Okay.
So this is what we do when we practice the Dharma.
Oh yeah, that's it. And then it's the Shijimanaya, Chevi Koda, and you got Chevi Kosunani, Chevi Chuni Pote, and the Shetar.
Oh,
Chef, you are the Jew, Chosen Delia, they are them, and the Usham Gobache. That's Chevi Kotinani, and Chief, or Chevi Chimungo. One tone, that's Tony Roa, Tony Gomane, and Gosune. The name of Views on it. Geshe Tari, just a part of the Israel. There is not just a
The foundation of all good qualities goes through the stages of the path that are shared with persons of small capacity and those that are shared with persons of medium capacity, which Geshe has already covered, hasn't he? In fact, we have them on tape, so since they've been recorded and everything, we don't need to go into them again. We've basically arrived at a section in the text that deals with the stages of the path of a person of great capacity. Properly speaking, these stages begin with cultivating equanimity. And then you go through the different stages, like, for instance, the sevenfold instructions on cause and effect. And though neither Geshe nor myself remember exactly where we left off, we reckon that we were finished with those sevenfold instructions on cause and effect. Yep. Geshe taught on all of those steps, didn't he? Is that right? Yeah, and from what I recall, he spoke a tiny bit about generosity and left off. Does that ring any bells?
No. Special intention? Special intention, but we didn't quite get into it. Okay. Yeah, okay. Definitely. Manzo, Gila, Ashim Shetagor, Mazuma,
we're working on developing these things in our continuum, not going quickly through the text, right? So.
Text is not hurry. We hurry minds to do that. Therefore, doesn't matter. Okay. Whatever. Did you know Dean Hakoson?
Do we know the sevenfold instructions on cause and effect?
Yeah. Understand? Did you remember these edge? Want to catch a cherry on? Okay. Then I'm going Nambi Union Geshe Jajapi. How did you compose that thing on the automotive Tagua? Roa. Such a Kangi Jila. How did you compose Toyaga? Nipi Savage. Such a Kangi Jila. So your Shincheni. I mean, Dijila, how did you compose? No, Toyaga Nipach, yours.
When you're really practicing the Buddhist teachings, then you're aimed at achieving the state of a Buddha, right? So that we, each and every one of us, have within ourselves a seed that is able to achieve Buddhahood. Every being with a life force has the seed, which is the potential or ability, the capacity, I should say, to become a Buddha. Every single, yep.
Understand? That they good in the yard. So it's a good toil.
What?
Didn't only I'm a self get Geshe.
What is so?
Get you to do something. Same business to them on the Hako.
In fact, Geshe talks about this in his book, for those of you who've seen it, right? First he talks about the mind, because it's so important to understand a bit about the mind and how it works.
Understand?
There's just no way we can proceed if we don't understand the way the mind works.
Understand?
All of our happiness and our suffering, in the future lives as well, all of the happiness and the suffering that we'll experience at the very root is created by mind. This is the Buddhist idea. The Buddhist, perspective.
Yeah. That's it. Man, so you never told me solo tambaina. Man, so much in dinner when you're a preacher, say the Zodua.
Oh, well, we have experience of this type of thing ourselves. I mean, think about all of the different problems that you might have gone through in this life. For the most part, they're created by mind, weren't they?
Yeah? Isn't it? Then on the killer to
Is that something you can accept? It's something you can accept, isn't it?
Oh. The killer to say the positive show the negative show Niga. Positive show the Muzo touch it. Negative show the red.
If that's the case, then you could also go a step further and recognize that within the mind there are positive and negative directions it might go in, right? You'd be quite certain that it's not the positive type of things that are creating these problems, but the negative ones, right?
Yeah, isn't it? And is that you're doing how much don't get how long and wrong is say negative say
so we can recognize how the creator of all of our problems, all of our suffering, is this negative side of things, the negative states of mind, right? Is that something we could all recognize?
Peace destroys searching.
We talk about this thing called peace, right? I mean, we all want peace. What is it that destroys the peace? Negative states of mind destroy the peace. That much is clear, isn't it? But we don't look at negative states of mind as enemies, do we?
Why? Welcome to you.
We welcome them, don't we?
Isn't it? This is a big mistake, really. Understand? Oh, hey. We sometimes become angry, then body speech. All welcome doing. It's been very, very body strong doing, mouth bad talking, all just sport, anger. Never thought anger is enemy. Give me suffering. Never thought. All welcome doing. Why is doing? We not control, isn't it? Big mistake. But first we need to understand. Then daytime, nighttime, all the time are really enemy. It's negative. It's mind thing. Then maybe thirdly, come time, wait, come in, then understand, then maybe little antidote. Otherwise, always well. Therefore, important. Then there is a learning. There is a Mahayana Tashi chi that is. Shamba Nijere, Shamba the Nijere that. But that, Manso Kadinaya, Shamba Nije that, Kanilaya, John, Samalaya, Jan, Deresh. But one of the Deresh. Did she think it?
So in here, the very root of the Mahayana Dharma are things like loving kindness and compassion. So that at all times, these loving kindness and compassion are fundamental. So you let these words trip off your tongue. Let these words stay in your mind, because these are your real friends. These are the things that are going to bring you happiness and protect you.
Okay. Then there is something also. Shamba the Nije condition go.
How do you cultivate things like loving kindness and compassion? In fact, Geshe has described it all here.
Okay. You check. Jil muche la yana, jil muche tene ta peg mone tane sonji muchapa. jil muchik lajak naliya, shamba, nije, tambo, nye la go, diji, ani, pami senche la go, teni jala go, teni senche kanga la go, gota,
the precious Lord, this inconceivable Tibetan master that we know is Lama Tsongkhapa, gives us an incredible way to cultivate loving kindness and compassion. He says, when developing these or cultivating them, start by cultivating them towards the people that you're close to, and then towards neutral persons, and then towards persons who are your enemies that you dislike, and then finally try and extend them towards all sentient beings.
Understand?
Do you understand that we must develop loving kindness and compassion towards those around us and our families first?
Okay?
It's utterly absurd to meditate on loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings while you're fighting with your family. I mean, don't do this, is what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying.
Understand? On number one, first family. On near one, dear one, first. Pure compassion. Not mixed attachment. That's it. I think not need. Or they necessarily. Somebody need you go down with Jeppe, Mukangale,
Geshe said it so many times we probably don't need to go over it again. He says, make sure that there's a tape available for everyone about how to cultivate loving kindness and compassion.
Okay? Important.
This is extremely important in our lives. In fact, this is the main practice for our lifetimes.
Okay? Marusu, Shamba the Nije Sate. Shamba Sate, such a tamche. Dada Ne Pani Sayinaya, such as Kanji Inayo. There was to them a show, there was to Dena, you be so no tere. Nije Sate, such a Kanji Inaya. Duma Macho show, Duma to Manchapa show, so no tere.
Loving kindness is that state of mind that thinks, with respect to everyone, be they friend, foe, stranger, that may they have happiness, may they be happy. Whereas compassion is that state of mind that thinks with respect to everyone, without exception, may they not suffer, may they be free from suffering.
Yeah, okay. They don't tell you Kondichaba, they jun. They say you what they need. Then you run to Jila, send the yonder jun the net to na.
If we get used to these states of mind, because that's what these two are, aren't they? Loving kindness and compassion are states of mind, or mental factors, right? If you get used to these states of mind, may also means be happy, may they be free of suffering. Then you probably don't need to talk about, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to steal. Those types of behaviors are naturally stopped.
Yeah.
Due to your familiarity, the degree, how much you're used to loving kindness and compassion.
Understand?
How important are these in our lives?
Okay. Loli no yamar. So positive tanda shambani jelo positive in the jiona, tanda loli in a yaga. One done peaceful. There are halabach. One yoker. Choroso G. The jig relative to the pruning. Juala soba do chi, Roala soba do, separate Chevala soba. Jonah? Kopongone shamani jela.
The practice of loving kindness and compassion are two of the main practices for our lives. They are the most important. They're also going to be your best friend. Some people get lonely when someone in their family or their partner or their child dies. But actually, if you have some familiarity with the practices of loving kindness and compassion, then actually, it's better to be alone. This loneliness is fine. In fact, you experience a sense of peace, a sense of bliss, really an incredible peace of mind. So that even, so that someone here who is practicing loving kindness and compassion, that their family, a family member might die, yeah, or their partner, or they might be separated from their partner, they might lose their child, or the child goes away, or something. But still, that person is not hindered by the loneliness.
Okay? Today is manzo same that now that the same that separate noise yamare. Today is say negative do not tell you. Positive they are tell you. Today is manzo no you jaya maybe say death positive is not where death chief did it.
In fact, these two become your best friends. Now, our mind and ourselves can never be separated. So that if the mind is negative, then that makes us suffer. Whereas if the mind is positive, that makes us happy. So the most important thing we can do then is to work on developing the positive states of mind, to make our minds more positive, because we will never be separated from our mind, unlike other things, which we eventually part with. Never our mind. Perhaps there's not a lot of order in tonight's talk. And anyway, it doesn't matter. That in order to ensure that the loving kindness and compassion that we develop is pure and perfect, and we go through these preliminary steps, developing recognition that all sentient beings have been one's mother, recollecting their kindness, and wishing to repay their kindness.
Okay.
These are causes for loving kindness and compassion.
Okay.
So what's the effect, the result of loving kindness and compassion? Well, the wholehearted resolve, or the highest intention, as we've called it.
Okay.
What is the wholehearted resolve? Well, it's a state of mind, or rather, it's something that involves the wish to attain the ability where you can free all sentient beings from suffering. In short, the wholehearted resolve thinks that may I myself free all sentient beings from suffering. I will assume responsibility for that.
Okay?
In the wholehearted resolve, you take responsibility for alleviating the suffering of others. But in order to free others from suffering, you must have the ability. You must have a certain ability. So that your focus then becomes, how can I develop the ability to free others from suffering? You think that, well, if I were to develop consummate compassion, consummate wisdom, and consummate ability, I could then free all sentient beings from their suffering. So, when you wish to achieve consummate, or ultimate, if you will, wisdom, compassion, and ability, then you're developing this aspiration that's intent on enlightenment.
Understand? Tell I mean, don't you just say me that? Don't you just say it?
So the mind that is accompanied by this is known as the mind of enlightenment.
Mind of enlightenment says, look, do not say.
The mind of enlightenment is, in brief, a mind.
Okay? It
is accompanied by two aspirations. Right? So the mind of enlightenment is known as a mind with the two aspirations.
Okay? Marusu Yinima, Sanje Tonche, Mayimba Shi, Mashi Gong, Tani Tuzo Gong, Choche, Ani Tuzo Sumgo, Tani Shamba Gong, Nije Gong, Tani Tandang Sheba Naji, Pasam Sad, Sanje Tonche Dumada Chawa, Ni Yambi, Sosom Chen Yambi Sono, Pasam the Sheba Goroa.
What it?
O Tera, Ani Jede Tani Taba, Je, Dumada Gawa, Jelia, Kartabu. Je dumane jawa do je jawa phatu do damba che nyame sono ita tela je tenye je bas.
We tried to develop the recognition that all sentient beings have been our mother. And then we recollect the kindness of them. And then we develop the wish to repay their kindness, 3. Then we develop loving kindness, develop compassion, and then develop the wholehearted resolve that Geshe was just speaking of, where you wish that you develop the wish that you will free all sentient beings from suffering. You not only have the wish that they be free of suffering, but you think that I'm going to take responsibility to make sure that that comes about. So since you're wishing for them to achieve a perfect and ultimate form of happiness, this type of aspiration that you develop along the way through these steps is known as an aspiration that strives for the welfare of others, or the aspiration intent on others' welfare.
Okay? This one. But these you did chat. Me chat. But chat shower chat do. Tanya ani nije tashima. Ani dawa nije tashima, shira tashima. Nipa tashima ji nyamba. Ona chat ngi sanji kumbu to sha nyambi. To achieve that purpose, that you need to develop the qualities of wisdom, compassion, and ability to their utmost extent. You must develop consummate wisdom, compassion, and ability. So then there's this other aspiration that thinks, I must achieve Buddhahood in order to do that. This is the second aspiration, the aspiration intent on enlightenment. Understand? One thought that I will free all sentient beings from suffering. And then another thought that in order to do that, I will achieve enlightenment. Okay? We've got the mind, so that once we develop these two aspirations, these two thoughts, then our mind becomes a mind of enlightenment. Okay. Understand? Don't you just say, the mind of enlightenment does not come from outside. Understand? Don't you just say, no. The trick is to make your mind a mind of enlightenment. Okay? Why is it that our minds are not at present minds of enlightenment? Because we've been unable to develop these two aspirations. Understand? Oh, that's the task then, to develop those two aspirations. And the mind that has these two aspirations is what we call in Buddhism a mind of enlightenment. Okay? Oh, if we develop that mind of enlightenment, then it's as if there's no longer any opportunity for
negative states of mind to occur. And once you become familiar with that, it's as if there's no longer the chance for these things to happen.
Understand?
These negative states. Geshe has explained this whole process, and it should be all recorded. He said to us that if you're meditating on compassion, don't just sit there and think, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. If when you're cultivating loving kindness, you just sit there and think, may all sentient beings be happy, it's not that helpful. If you're meant to be meditating on the mind of enlightenment and you just think, may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings, it's not that beneficial.
Not beneficial. There's a beneficial maybe.
It's that's not to say that it's not beneficial. It's
very, very,
right?
very special virtue mind. Of course, benefit, but
there's some. It's a very special virtuous mind, right? So it's not that beneficial, right? I mean, the point, or as Geshe is saying, is the point is it's not that potent or powerful. That's the idea. It's not that it's not beneficial. It's just not that powerful, right? So if you're going to meditate on these, then you go through the different steps that are outlined, by beginning with the equanimity, developing the recognition that all sentient beings have been your mother, recollecting their kindness, seeking to repay their kindness, so that if you then go on to try and cultivate loving kindness, then the loving kindness you develop is going to be quite potent, quite powerful. And keep in mind what Lama Tsongkhapa, the Precious Lords, advises. He says, begin by trying to cultivate it towards those you're close to, and then towards neutral persons, and then towards enemies, and then finally try and extend it towards all sentient beings. If you do that, it's impossible that your mind will not change. Impossible for your mind not to change if you meditate on it in this way. So then, meditate on compassion in that way. And then meditate on the mind of enlightenment in that way.
Okay?
Meditate like this. Because otherwise, our meditations just will not be that potent. They won't be that powerful. Meditate on these things in that order as well. There's a certain sequence to this. So don't stuff up the sequence. Don't twist it all around. But meditate on these things in that order.
Okay?
The mind of enlightenment. You could say that the essence or nature of the mind of enlightenment is a mind with the two aspirations. We clear on that? Yeah?
Okay?
What that means is that you have this mind that thinks that I will achieve complete, perfect Buddhahood so that I may free all sentient beings from suffering. I mean, when you get into what it means, there it is. That's how you explain it. Right? But in brief, it's the mind with the two aspirations.
What do you say? That's the thing you should say. That's sad. That's the thing I don't want to positive say you the positive say the level. That positive say the level is that I'm not to check. Positive say,
that is a virtuous mind. But once you develop that virtuous mind, then you got to do something, right? I mean, now you got the mind of enlightenment. Now you need to train in the deeds. That's necessary because at that point we still haven't achieved our goal. Namely, we haven't yet developed ultimate wisdom, compassion, and ability. We haven't yet become Buddhas, right?
Yeah.
So at that point you need to practice the six perfections. Practice the perfections of generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, meditative stabilization, and wisdom.
Okay? What was it? Yeah, you've been your legs at it. You've been your legs at the total. Don't say pay at it. Don't say pay a catch a shot. Mansuchi, Chala, Nipotea, Tanaji, Chivijamba, Tanaji bigger, and Shombashimba Sandabo. Suzuki the Jimbi is there.
What it?
Jimbi, you're don't say pay.
Now, as for the practice of generosity, we should know that it's mainly about increasing our generous attitude. And you can give some material thing. That's the giving of material things. You can give the Dharma or loving kindness. These are types of generosity. Yeah? But these things, the things that you give, are really the substances of generosity. Generosity itself is that generous attitude, that intention to give. So, since that's the case, we need to try and increase our intention to give, that generous attitude.
Okay?
Alright, so then from next week onward, we're going to begin by explaining the way to practice generosity. And then the following week, the way to practice ethics. Then the following week, the way to practice patience. We're going to have to make some rules here, right? Because otherwise we forget where we are in the text. I mean, there's a week goes by in between where we don't come down. So we forget where we were.
Okay? So
we'll leave it there for tonight.
Okay? So I am Geshe. But I need also practice compassion and love kindness and virtue. You are Australia. You also need this thing, practice. Therefore, everybody, all the time. How long? No problem. Short time, long time, whatever. Every day need continue practice. Okay? This is very important. Naruso Shambada Nije, Conjuge says that Nika Pachichimunda. My Shambad Gonome, my Niji Gonome, my Laka Mamboyo, not this me calendar.
Loving kindness, compassion, the mind of enlightenment, these are not obstacles to work. These are not obstacles to your job. You know, this idea that, I don't have time to cultivate loving kindness. I don't have time to cultivate compassion or the mind of enlightenment. Geshe doesn't accept that.
Okay? Working time. Or even just sleeping time.
If we go to sleep thinking about cultivating loving kindness, compassion, and these types of things, then even our sleep becomes virtuous.
Yeah.
Even our sleep.
Okay? Therefore, everybody, familia, one time magoji, but the tender them much, I don't know if I talk George.
Everyone, please, then try to make your lives meaningful. Thank you. You may ask any questions you want.
One of the two characteristics of the mind of enlightenment is freeing, or the desire, developing the desire to free all sentient beings from suffering. And you were saying, or I was saying, that it is not good enough just to sit there and hope that everybody is free from suffering, because that doesn't help much. But for some reason, in the last whatever many months, I've been getting more and more interested in the medicine Buddha. And it seems to me that the medicine Buddha, actually, what the particular Buddha does is freeing people from different types of suffering. I understand it's not just physical, but it's also mental, emotional. And I understand that there is a need to receive an empowerment in order to be able to practice the sadhana of the medicine Buddha. Is there any time, any program, or any event that is going to happen, or is it planned to give this empowerment here in Brisbane?
Geshe was speaking about how it's not enough to just think that male sentient beings be free of suffering. You actually need to go and do something, which relates to this newfound interest you have in medicine guru, or medicine Buddha. For instance, because this is a being who is actively working to alleviate the suffering of people on many levels. But in order to do this practice, or the sadhana at least, you understand that you need an empowerment. So is there any plans to, or are there any plans to give this empowerment? 천식 이셈나와 코너스 디 sem진 탐지 등에를 제외체 되니 상기 거반 통이 세기도스 아니 데 치포 삼바 이네 디게 마레스 데 인지 menji 콘스 등에 타와 답시 제고 그랬어 아니 데탄 자네 그런 상기 맨라 콜 데네 토는 질래 버렸어 상기 맨라 세디 그 콘스 sem진기 등에 빠버르 콘스 데네 said degi orwasa jisan ko sangi menlan juta tine chitengo sangi dute juta te dambala yinjiminji wang chi shugo gudus ko sonsa jisan maombala sangi menlan wang dine nai ki chashi dugesa
I don't know how you call possible rate
Geshe's not aware of any plans at present, but it's a possibility if there's the interest. If there's the interest, we can see when there's time.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look and see.
Okay. Me kechete koni kamando. Mando noja jinjali ya peja tu no la eso ya. Se le pone do sanji como toda sha. Ni sei, ni para ma.
네.
다른 아저씨들이 이제 중간에 가서 이제 이들이 근데 자셔요. 자나지 마루 뇨뇨 손에 손을 담아이나. 대치권 이제 중간에 가서 손을 짓다는 데 되어이나. 참 좀 쉬무지 때문에 듣게. 오늘 이니마 바지니 지 손을 담는 데서부터 랑슈메바 데살이야. 요 침벌을 못해요. 이 등에 이 라버에 맞서야 노지 처러수고 이제 중간에 가서 손을 그거 되려요나. 대야 파유 마셔라. 맞도 대대 파유. 야대 니라야 돼야 차사지 맞게받게. 너지 거대야 돼야 파유. 대체는 이게 몇 차로 그러다. Therefore,
please don't misunderstand what Geshe was saying. If you look in the Buddhist texts all say that the mind that thinks, may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings in order to alleviate their suffering, is the mind of enlightenment. And that state of mind that thinks, may all sentient beings be free of suffering, is compassion, and so forth. But Geshe, if he thinks about his own experience, he must conclude that simply thinking, may all sentient beings be free of suffering, for instance, just doesn't have that powerful transformative effect on the mind. Yeah. So, that's why he would encourage us to go through the different steps that come before, like developing equanimity and the recognition of all sentient beings within one's mother, recollecting their kindness, and so on and so forth. So that if we develop, or meditate on love, compassion after having gone through these steps, then that we're more likely to have a transformative experience of this state of mind, right? But if you are meditating on the thought, may all sentient beings be free of suffering, don't just toss it out, right? Because you might toss that out and then not completely, achieve or practice what do everything that Geshe is advising, and then you're left with neither, right? Which is not where you want to be, certainly. So don't just throw one out, but rather try and integrate all of that, so that you're meditating in a way that's going to lead to a real transformative experience, so that your meditations have an impact and a potency to them. This thought, may all sentient beings be free of suffering, itself is extremely precious.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So if I sit there and meditate on that, am I going to really develop quickly? Geshe says, you're not going to develop very quickly like this. Yeah.
Maybe slowly. Okay. On some question? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, would you agree that the more painful experiences are the best opportunities to practice loving?
Would Geshe agree that the most painful experiences are the best opportunities to practice these?
I'll give you an example.
Uh-huh.
A few weeks ago, one of my chickens was very badly mauled by a feral cat.
Uh-huh.
It clearly wasn't going to survive. So I was faced with the issue of whether to leave it to die or whether to euthanize it.
So, for instance, recently one of your chooks, was attacked by a feral cat.
I took the chicken and started onto the border and talked about it.
다 지당 안즈 가네 제대 때 치기 라랑 카이기 고가 야시 페이지 인사로 왔어. 가 배는 등에 뇽트 가와. 강에 의시 제트 가와. 페이지에 치기 라랑 가서 야시 때 인사로 왔어. 배는 코로나 자태되네. semchen 자태 여러와. 자태데 냐데기스. 아니 두드 카싱에라 되니 심이 년바 말이데 심이 토스 두자드네 레네 되니 자태데 세트로체 손사 토스 콘베 되니 시 자태 컨서지 시바레사 마시코마 코 되니 sem교버와 sem교네 코스 되니 상게 콘조기 코리아 자태 데파 라빙이사 그래서 제우미세면 데 코란데 데레자 데 코란즈
먼저
치기라는 가서 거가 야시 데려와서
야 대치르다 먼저 샴바데 니제세야 됐다 니제 첨보세야 샴바 첨보세야 돼 진짜 탐셔나 고고라 고고가 있어 야 먼저 대배야 본데 근데 먼저 진짜 두마와 상대 키로나 있으나 샤데 넘치라 아니 심이고 소자니 두마 심지냐 이디디카라 대라니 비니제다 요요 봐라 내 집보라 미비니제테 이제 첨보세야 돼요 말아. 다데 거의 란지 봐. 로아. 코나 생이 스제트 졸이야. 내가 수업이 타이 봐. 누가 된다고 뭐 냐데요. 로아. 썸니. 아니 스제 간가 가신 미스들이 냐데요. 가신 미스들이 냥게 매나야 뇨야게 저 사베 아니 생이 될 자리 되대요. 근데 이따 거기 생체생이들라 누만 전화지 요는 놈들 아니 생체 싫어라 미니 아니 이제 거나 이제 첨부해야 돼.
What you say is true. In fact, actually, this is a good question. It gives us a chance to talk about another aspect to these questions, because there's a difference between simply loving kindness and great loving kindness, or compassion and great compassion. That, if you, like in the situation you described, you have a chook who was, attacked by a cat, and here it is suffering, and you're focused on this single chicken, and you think that, I wish it would be free of suffering. Like, of course, that type of compassion is present. It's already there, right? But that compassion itself, or that sentiment itself, is not great compassion. It's compassion, but not great compassion. To make it great compassion, and we must recognize how this is a type of suffering that countless sentient beings are undergoing at this very moment. And many more sentient beings might not be experiencing this at the moment, but have the seeds, so that they will have to experience this type of suffering in the future. That in fact, this is in the nature of cyclic existence, and that there are many, many beings that are going and will have to undergo this suffering. So focus on, may all sentient beings be free of this type of suffering. Then that becomes great compassion. So that in great compassion, your focus is not on any one single sentient being, but rather is on sentient beings in general, and the wish for them all to be free of suffering. So this is good. This is because we have to distinguish between compassion, simple, and great compassion.
Understand?
When we see a sentient being suffering, and we need to recognize how this is, a product of our uncontrolled existence. How sentient beings suffer because of the way that they lack control and are powerless. So that we think about this as a feature of cyclic existence and extend our sentiments of compassion to embrace all.
Okay?
Yeah. There's another question in the back. Yeah. So when we develop the mind of enlightenment, we develop the wish to free all sentient beings from suffering, achieve, establish them in enlightenment, etc. How does this happen? Does it happen like all at once, in the sense that like everyone in this world, for instance, achieves enlightenment, or does it happen more on a one-to-one level, like, for instance, with His Holiness? Someone comes into contact with His Holiness and then develops, and then is enlightened, and so forth. How exactly does it happen? 그래서 천직이 쌤 쉐드가나 semchin tamche dunga le chawa sho de semlo de ye para wasa desa kune chonji le ka ba sho ka ba sha de semlo de yan yusara wasa dene ine ko dunga le chotan de kandri nasa semchin pena zumbling dila semchin tamche ko tunyam de dunga le cha ro be o mena por ko chik le pena kotuk tune kon roba che konza dunga traiki tapsi chichaya besa pena kyamgan rinpoche la jeba yina dine kyamgan rinpoche je dine labja shu dine nyamna che ne konza kansam chi la dine dunga la traya dogoro wasa de kandi yana konza kanga tu chik tu dine dunga la traya dogoro chanchi toyo ngore o mena chigi la pa roba che ne dine chegi resa
Maruso, teach it. Okay. For example, Sanjay Shajat to be saying, and Maruso Sanjay Kangi saying, Sam give Rajish Chipachichan. Yinaya, Maruso Sanjay said to Zujet, Tanamadu Shabanaji, negative Naida, Nemo say you to do with Jimmy. Rawa, Rajil Shuyamare. Inaya, Jimmy Daddy. Sanjay said that Juba Delhi Tata. The Nita Marusu, Rembe, so Tendila Teni, and 가서고로 야 잔도로 마도 디치데 다 두고 말해 산지 페나야 디치데 다지 두고 말해 르메 잔도 라수수 텐딜라라.
The mind of a Buddha, like Buddha Shakyamuni for instance, and the mind of sentient beings like ourselves are by nature the exact same. We have the exact same nature to our minds. The difference is that the mind of a sentient being like ourselves is obscured by disturbing emotions, these negative states of mind that Geshe was talking about. Now these disturbing emotions have not tainted the nature of our mind, but rather obscure the mind itself. A Buddha's mind is utterly without such disturbing emotions, has no obscurations whatsoever. It's already become free of those things. So that we become free of these obscurations gradually, in dependence upon the degree of our joyous effort. Slowly removing more and more and more and more. So it'd be impossible for all sentient beings to free themselves from these obscurations all at the same time. And even if a Buddha came into our presence, it could not remove those obscurations for us. So rather, the removal of these obscurations, the things that distinguish the sentient being from a Buddha, depends upon the individual, him or herself. It depends on, and how quickly that happens, and when that happens, depends on the individual's degree of joyous effort.
Yeah, understand?
The point is, we have to do something ourselves.
Okay. Refuge
Otherwise, we might have this attitude that, that we go for refuge to someone else, and they come along, and they eliminate our suffering. They clean us up, and set us out. It's like like in a kitchen, you've got this radish, right? And you skin the radish. Someone that skins the radish, and there are the radishes. It's all clean and all set to be cooked, right? As if this is not the case. It's not like someone comes along and and cleans our obscuration. How come if they're enlightened, why haven't they freed us? Yeah.
Okay.
Because the chanchu taught sana, didn't answer much over the hard the Karina. Because we haven't been able to do what's required ourselves. Because we haven't been able to cleanse our own minds.
Isn't it? Yeah. That's it. Something?
We're trying to become a Buddha, and can the place we're trying to go be empty darkness instead of empty bliss if we don't get all our worldly things done first?
If we're trying to become a Buddha, can the place that we're trying to go end up being empty darkness as opposed to empty bliss if we haven't done our worldly things first? That's a sangye kopan togi samachi yorwa. Ani dela could detong salama dovache. Ani muna tomba salachi josigi de besa. Pena tini chitan jiktengi leka yorwa. Chitan nonsa samla on jiktengi leka chichego pena leka chichego samla yopache. Lega te kora jiktengi lega. Uine tsete jiktengi lega yimbache. Jeza nonsa sangi ki kopang dugi liya nonsa jiktengi lega dine mache bache shasha bayina dine nonsa yapu drogure besa.
I don't know. You take like I said.
Koran do some lagi ore. Nonsa
Jiteg leka to jitel debi leka se ate so ni tangila bariba so no la rale chara computer leka chewe ina or nas chigi ina or chicha chigi ina Sonchu said, Niju Gunilani, teacher. Sonchu said, Niju Gunilani, and Nas Chena, Dada Chena. Sonchu said, Niju Gunilani, Anji, a computer, Jadalia, Robert Chavina, Karina Mena.
Look, the difference between worldly work and non-worldly, transcendental work depends on one's motivation. So that if you work in computers and you're motivated by loving kindness, compassion, the mind of enlightenment, then what you do can be transcendental. It doesn't have to be worldly. Whether you're a nurse or you're a teacher or you're a doctor, what you do with the motivation of loving kindness and compassion and the mind of enlightenment, then your work, even if it's just typing things into a computer, or if it's teaching people or helping people through your knowledge of medicine, that could be transcendental work.
Understand?
There's virtue to that. As Geshe often mentions, that we work for a wage, right? Which we must do. We have to do.
Okay?
And you can work for a wage, in order to get money, for instance, and that can be virtuous. Yeah, I mean, you can correct your motivation so that your work, even if it's for a wage, is still positive.
Yeah. Okay. Therefore,
So, Geshe is saying that he doesn't understand so clearly the distinction you're drawing between worldly work, and something that's other.
Yeah.
Geshe says that practicing the Dharma does not prevent us from doing our jobs, working in the world. Yeah. If you're going to sit there, meditating one-pointedly, then perhaps it can be an obstacle.
Because they cannot, isn't it? Otherwise,
because you can't work when you're doing that, can you? Right? But otherwise, practicing the Dharma is not an obstacle.
I'm not necessarily just talking about work. Like, let's say a person doesn't feel their life has been completed unless they did something.
Like, for instance?
And that might not be, get drunk every night, for example,
Uh-huh.
Like, let's say it's something they really want to do,
So if we don't do everything that we want to do,
Exactly.
and things are left over,
Yep.
can that be...
And obviously,
Can that... Once it... Depa nanshin jema tuna? Dini shi sona? Karpa dini nyade sigirwa? Jeba, jishe sigirwa sa. Jizang gansa depa nanshin ma jeba che, chigi nyamna jeba ina. Dini kansan chigla karpa jishe sigirwa sa. Di chigi pachi chigiri besa. Depa nanshin ma jeba che. Chigi nyamna jeba ina. Oh, nga deba nanshin che tu ma son samde.
Deba nuji che tu ma so. Chigi nyole ma cheba, chigi nyole che.
Oh.
Deba nuji ma cheba che.
Dine chigi nyamne chigi le ya dine deba. Okay, we need to be more clear. Quran. I said to Geshe, so if we don't, if we practice the Dharma but without, doing everything that we desire, we feel like. We could die and feel regret about that. Is that an obstacle to the Dharma? And Geshe says, what do you mean by not doing everything that you feel like?
For example, me, 70 years old, then monk doing. I'm not married. Then I die time. I regret I'm not married. This like this? This is not non-virtue. It's okay. Doesn't matter. Isn't it?
Yeah, regretting that's not a non-virtue. It's no big deal.
Yeah, doesn't matter. It's okay. Is it?
so that won't stop you from becoming Buddha, from you.
성격이 코판토에 바치 지금 말하고 해서. 그래서 대반 한신 제트마 손스. No, not at all. How is that an obstacle? That's not going to be an obstacle.
I dislike never fishing. At that time, I never this fishing, this regret. Never obstacle become good out. Never. Don't worry. I thank you.
Okay, so we'll leave it there for this evening.